I love character action games. They are so ridiculous and they have so much flavor. It is just such a wonderfully fun and campy genre as a whole, and we don't see nearly enough new character action games. So, to hell with it, I decided I'm gonna make one myself. Hi, my name is Gator Soup. I'm an indie game developer with a history of making 2D puzzle games, and I'm making Occultation, a horror-themed stylish character action game. Now you might be asking yourself, what is character action? Well, for the uninitiated, character action, or stylish action as it's sometimes called, is a subgenre of the hack and slash brawler, with an emphasis on deep combat systems built upon combos. Basically, give the player a combat tool set and let them go nuts, stringing together insane combos and chasing high scores. It's basically a genre built around schmovement, but for combat. Schkumbat? The subgenre appeared in the late 90s and early aughts, with the earliest popular example being Devil May Cry, but there are quite a few other notable games in the genre, including the God of War series, Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, a weird Nightmare Before Christmas game, as well as a bunch of indies in recent years. In the case of Occultation, the major influences are the Devil May Cry series, the early God of War games, and the early Resident Evil games. Now, that last reference may have you scratching your head a bit. Resident Evil is clearly survival horror, so how does that fit with action games? Well, it's no secret that Devil May Cry initially started life as a Resident Evil game, so some horror aesthetics have always been present in the genre, and my game is no different, because despite its action gameplay, Occultation will have strong horror-inspired aesthetics rooted in 16th century Europe. Right now, I'm calling it Renaissance horror, but that's because I'm not sure if there's a better name or if there's another word for this genre that already exists. So let me know. Anyway, Occultation will be heavily inspired by the PlayStation 2 and GameCube era of video games, and the aesthetics and gameplay sensibilities that came with that era. Here are the main points for what I'm going for with Occultation. Fast-paced, hectic gameplay, dynamic and expressive combat, a visually striking and unique horror setting, and early aughts video game aesthetics and fidelity, i.e. high-end, low poly. So now for a little bit of backstory. Occultation is set in 16th century Europe, in a fictitious kingdom north of the Adriatic, somewhere in the Alps. I'm currently calling this kingdom the Final Kingdom, but I will probably come up with a better name down the road. Anyway, in the world of Occultation, things are coming to an end, and the flame of human existence is about to be extinguished. All that remains is the Final Kingdoms, and the humans being led there like sheep to the slaughter. In Occultation, the player must travel through the Final Kingdom and defeat the forces of the Heart Beasts. The Heart Beasts are a group of godlike entities who have waged war upon humanity, and they treat humanity like their own personal food source. To save the last vestiges of humanity, the player must defeat the Heart Beasts, collect their hearts, and unlock the dark secrets at the center of the Final Kingdom. As development continues and these devlogs continue, I'll go into great detail about the unique game mechanics that set Occultation apart. But to start, I feel like I should get something out of the way. Now, I've made a decent number of games up to this point, but I have never made a full 3D action game before. So, there are going to have to be some ground rules to keep me from losing all my hair in 5 years of my life on this project. It might be a little late on the hair front. Point A. This game will be completed before the end of 2025. Point B. This game is going to be short but deep. Point C. The primary focus will be first and foremost on the player's moveset and the enemies you will use that moveset against. A moveset that is dynamic and expressive is really important to me, and it is more interesting and more valuable than anything else. Point D. Quality over quantity. This is honestly really self-explanatory, but basically, I'd rather deliver 4 to 6 hours of great content over 30 hours of less than perfect content, so that's what I'm going to aim for. So with all that said, what have I done so far? And what is the state of the project at this moment? Well, I spent a lot of time learning Blender, experimenting with 3D game dev, making tools, and making lots of small throwaway prototypes. I basically spent most of the last 7 months in this phase. That is until recently, when I decided it was time to start the project in earnest. And what better place to start the project than with the player? So here's the game as it stands right now. As you can see, it's still early days, but let's break it down. Now, in his book Level Up, the author and game designer Scott Rogers talks about the 3 C's: character, camera, and controls. And personally, I think that's as good a place as any to start talking about my game. However, I'm going to talk about them in the order camera, character controls. This is mostly a summary at this point, and I will do significant deep dives into each of these areas in future videos. If you recall, at the start I said I was making a hack and slash game, inspired by the PlayStation 2 era, and a big feature in a lot of those early hack and slash games, i.e. Devil May Cry and God of War, was the cinematic fixed camera. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to use one. Don't get me twisted, I think the fixed camera is a fantastic option for many games. But I personally always find it a bit jarring in fast-paced games when the camera changes and I have to try and reorient myself. So what am I going to do? Well, I think I'm going to pull from more modern games in this regard. During the 6th generation, the third-person camera became rather popular, and we've seen a lot more modern character action games use it, such as Devil May Cry 5 and Hi-Fi Rush, and that's really what I'm going to pull from. Now thankfully, I had a third-person camera prototype from an earlier attempt, and with a little finagling, I had no trouble getting it working in the main project. Right now it is just a basic camera, but it has collision detection, and can easily be expanded upon in later updates, or scrapped if I change my mind. I'll be honest, I had expected camera collisions to be rather hard until I watched a tutorial and learned about the spring arm functionality in Godot. In Godot, the spring arm is a node that can have a camera attached to it. Then when something intersects with the spring arm, it adjusts so that the camera moves to the point of collision smoothly. This is a very rudimentary camera, but so far I like it, and I do think I will make it more dynamic and engaging. But for now, that's enough. So what's next? Up next from the 3 C's is character. And, well, here's the thing. When I say character, I'm not talking about 3D modeling. Or at this point, I don't want to 3D model. I feel like I would end up throwing away a lot of what I worked on, and I think it's something that I can do later on. But up until recently, I have been just using cylinders as placeholders, and yeah, that's not going to cut it anymore. Don't get me wrong, using simple shapes is a fast way to prototype, but let's be real. What is more interesting to watch, this or this? Now, I collected the character models and animations from Mixamo, which is by no means a sponsor, but just a really cool and helpful site to know about when you're prototyping. So let's just move on to the fun part of character work, the character's moveset. This will likely be an evolving part of the game over the next several devlogs, especially as I start to solidify what kind of main character we're going to have. But here's what I have right now, so that I can start thinking about game feel. Right now, the player can run, jump, block, parry, dash, air dash, light attack, and light attack combo. Honestly, it wasn't particularly hard to get any of this working, just time consuming. You see, I wanted to make sure that down the road, this moveset can be easily expanded upon without requiring massive rewrites. Character action games always have robust player move kits with lots of contextual button combinations where the slightest change in the player's input will result in dramatically different character actions and animations. Think of how in Devil May Cry, pulling back on the thumbstick while holding the aim button and then clicking the attack button launches someone. Now, in another instance, pushing forward on the thumbstick while holding the aim button and then hitting the attack button sends out a stinger strike. This is the kind of contextual button pressing we need to be aware of with these kinds of games. So rather than have the player code in a single file or a small group of files that break every time I make a tiny change, I opted to use a finite state machine. For those that don't know, a finite state machine in simple terms is just a coding paradigm where intended behaviors are isolated to specific scripts called states and are used only when certain criteria are met. We normally see this in enemy behavior, but it can also be used more directly to handle player behavior. So why do this? Well, my line of thinking is simple. If I can break up the player's intended behaviors and actions into different states, then it will be a lot easier to manage them, update them, and add new behaviors and actions. The basic idea is that specific states handle specific behaviors and lead to other specific states. That way, when working, I only have to focus on a small handful of player behaviors to update and improve code. For example, if the player is idle, they can launch a light attack, block, dodge, or run. But if the character is dodging, then they shouldn't be able to attack or block, or run while the dodge is taking place. And if a player is idle, they shouldn't be able to launch the third attack of a combo. They must only be allowed to launch the first attack. I highly recommend you check out the Shaggy Dev's YouTube channel, as well as AIN Games' YouTube channel, as they do a much better job of explaining finite state machines and showing how they work in this context. For now though, I just need to make sure I keep the player state machine manageable, so if any of you have any suggestions or recommended improvements to improve the state management, please let me know. Anyway, now I want to talk about combat. Okay, that wasn't a great segue, but honestly, I'm an alligator. I can't even ride a segue. Combat is a massive part of action and hack and slash games. Now, none of my prior projects featured combat, so this is all very new to me. But here's the general gist of combat in Occultation. The player will have several different forms of attack and a wide variety of attacks. The combat system will revolve around combos. The player will use button combinations and a state-based behavior system to string together really cool and stylish moves. Engaging in combat will build up something called Radiance, and that will expand the player's moveset exponentially as they continue to fight. Now, Radiance is not really implemented yet, so this is a very shallow overview for now, but I intend to do a deep dive in the future. Right now though, combat is simply a light attack combo, blocking, parrying, and move canceling, because that's really important. Based on what I know, I decided to attach hitbox detection windows to animations. I also did the same for the combo windows. Basically, if the player wants to combo an attack, they need to press the next attack button within the window or the combo ends. I also created blocking and parrying windows. Blocking is really straightforward. Someone's going to hit you, you can block to mitigate damage. The way the parry mechanic works is also pretty simple. If the player blocks right before the enemy attack lands, it stuns the enemy, and the player has the opportunity to launch a devastating strike. Right now, that devastating strike uses the same animation as the basic attack, but I will change it down the road. My understanding is that by having hitboxes, combo windows, block windows, and parry windows attached to animations, they are essentially frame perfect, and it seems to work out well. But if anyone knows more or has a better solution, please feel free to leave a comment. As for move canceling, it's a pretty straightforward mechanic. Basically, the player can cancel a move midway through if they're about to take damage or they've changed their mind. For example, if they're attacking, but they need to block or dodge, they can immediately do that, stopping the attack midway through. In the end, this moveset doesn't look like much yet, but it is a strong start for the prototype, and down the road, this will become a very fleshed out system, and I think it will make for far more interesting gameplay. Now, last but not least, controls. Controls are arguably the most important part of any video game, and even more so in my case, as a good hack and slash action game lives and dies by how it feels to control the player. If the controls feel bad, clunky, or unintuitive, players are likely to lose interest. A good moveset is meaningless if it controls like a wet sock, and I'm an alligator. I know wet socks. I don't actually, I just don't really have feet for socks. So for right now, I'm going to put a pin in controls, because it really could be its own video, and I think we've covered enough for one day. Honestly, I'm really happy with the progress in this devlog. Even though this is all arguably very boilerplate stuff, I'm glad I got to show it off, and I think that's where I'm going to wrap things up for now. But I will be releasing a new devlog every month from here on out, so follow along and please feel free to leave feedback and suggestions about the games or about the videos. Up next, I'm thinking I'll do a much more robust expansion of the player character and explanations of combat. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to show you what's in store for Occultation. If you want to follow the devlogs, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel or joining the Patreon. On the Patreon, I'll be sharing weekly updates, behind the scenes footage, and concept art, as well as some other things down the road. Thanks again, and see you soon.